This is Grief and Grit, from heartache to high fives with a dash of sass. The podcast that turns the tables on traditional grief talks with a fresh, sassy spin. Listen in for candid conversations about the messy, awkward, and downright hilarious aspects of dealing with loss. Because sometimes the best way to cope is with a little laughter and a lot of grit.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How about you?
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Got my tea, which I feel like I need today. Yeah, I don't know, my throat's a little scratchy, so
I think it's that the allergies,
Oh,
like
yeah.
the leaves starting to drop and like all
Yeah.
of the stuff.
I know, and I don't get spring allergies, I get fall allergies, so I think you're right. I didn't even think of that.
It's not fun. I've had it
No.
too. I know. And I've had to start giving Jack Zyrtec every morning
Yeah.
because he
Yeah.
hasn't
He
been.
gets, I know.
Yeah. Fun
Well,
times.
everybody get your cup of tea for whatever reason.
Yes.
Get comfortable and let's get started.
Yeah. Today's an exciting day because we have a really special guest.
Yes.
I'm so excited. Okay.
I know.
I'm going to let Simone go, but I can't wait.
I know. We are very excited. So well, for all of you who've been listening up to now, this month is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. So we're continuing our series of featuring special guests who have endured these types of losses, on so many different levels. And this is a big reminder to our listeners that this is a very sensitive topic. It's difficult for those who've experienced these type of losses, and also because it's such a polarizing topic in today's political climate. So we really want to just be aware of that. And while we all have our own beliefs, we at Grief and Grit feel very strongly that no matter what our story, grief is grief. And excuse me.
Those allergies.
I know. And we're here to help people feel less alone, to create that community. So we're trying to eliminate the judgment and stigma surrounding these real life experiences. And we're just working towards normalizing grief, making it real for everybody out there who've experienced any kind of loss.
Thank you, Simone. And today we have my dear friend, Sarah Jarvis. We go back to middle school, high school days, and I am so grateful to have my dear friend here. She was a math teacher for 10 years and taught pre-K for 4 years. And now she is at home with her miracle kiddos. Charlie is 10 now and Cammie is 3. And I just first want to welcome Sarah and also thank her because when I was going through my journey, she just provided so much love and support. So thank you for all the things, Sarah.
Oh, well, Greer, first of all, thank you for having me on. It is such an honor to even be asked to do something like this. And, I'm just so proud of you for everything that you have been through and just coming out on the other side and being able to talk about it. And it just, it makes a difference, as you know, for people going through things. Just to be able to hear that they're not alone.
Thank you. And I have heard you share your story over the years and even seen as the story is changing in real time. And I just want to thank you for your openness, your vulnerability, and always trying to support the person next to you. I've seen you lead groups. I've seen you speak to, local women about your story and bringing awareness. And you are just incredible. And I'm really excited to share it with the Grief and Grit listeners. So, Sarah, your story is very unique because no two stories are the same, but there are also so many people who are going through, have gone through, or will go through what you have experienced. So, do you want to go ahead and kind of give us the story of your fertility journey and building your family?
Absolutely. Yes. I feel like it's so important to tell this story, my story and all of our stories, because like you said, grief has a common thread through all of these losses and these heartbreaks of you expect something, I think, in life. And, however naively you feel like if you follow the rules and you do things right, that you can somehow have the outcome that you always hoped for and dreamed of. But then I think we come to a place sometimes where, in life we have this crazy wake up call that it doesn't matter what you do or what you could have done or done differently or that this just isn't in your control and things are going to not go the way that you had planned. Things are not going to look the way that you imagined them to look. And there's a lot of grief in that. I always say, I think what screws us up most in life is the picture in our head of how it was supposed to be. And I, since I was very young, had imagined that I would have a big family and have always loved children, became a teacher, married the love of my life, who is my best friend, and he also loves children. And it was one of the first things we talked about on our first date is that we love children. And his mother was a teacher, and he has just come from a long line of teachers and people that love children. And I know he wanted a big family, and I just felt so like, wow, this everything is coming together. I've met the love of my life. He wants children too. And about 10 months later, we were engaged, and about 2 years later, we started trying to start a family. And we realized pretty quickly that it just wasn't happening. And we did, go seek help and went first to my OBGYN and then later to a specialist who was able to do a whole lot of testing, procedures, everything you can think of, truly. We truly did it all. And I still remember waiting on these last test results, and the doctor called me. And I mean, I had been waiting for his call it had been 6 weeks waiting for this test.
Wow.
And he called, and I remember I was driving and I pulled off of the road to get this call. And he told me, Sarah, I never give anyone a 0% chance of success because I've seen crazy miracles. And he said, but in your case, I think you have less than a 1% chance, if not a 0% chance of ever carrying a baby.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's heartbreaking.
And I think that I had this hope sort of out there, sort of that, oh, well, surely with IVF or something, I'll be able to have a baby. I mean, worst case scenario, right? And then getting that news, I think it really it was a turning point. And I started the sort of grief process with some anger. How could this be? This is everybody gets to have a child, or, it was some medical intervention. Surely they can have a child. Surely there's something that they can do. This is not how my life was supposed to go. I felt shame, a lot of shame. And, I think even some embarrassment that I wasn't able to carry a child. My husband wanted that and I wanted that. And I remember thinking that if my husband had married anybody else, he would have been able to build this family that he always wanted.
I think as women, when we blame ourselves for
Absolutely.
these fertility challenges,
Mhm.
when there's nothing we could do or change.
Yeah.
We have no control over it. And
Exactly.
that the guilt on top of the grief is just, it makes everything so much harder.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in that moment, you're also, I think, sort of what makes it even more complicated is the fact that you are kind of doing this in private when it's infertility. And,
Right.
there was a lot
Yeah.
of, because, and I already felt ashamed, but
Right.
then, I felt like, well, if I could, quietly do IVF and I can have my baby, I don't have to share all of this information, and here I am on a podcast. But I'm thinking,
Who would have thought, right? I feel the
seriously,
same way.
really, and I'm grateful that I'm here. I am,
Me
but
It is, and
yeah,
that's what grief is.
it
It's a
is.
journey. It's
Yes,
a journey that gets us to the point of being able to share.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is exactly. And in the moment, I could tell you, I could not have even told my story of where I was at without, crying in between sobs. But, things did get better. And, I sat with the idea for a while of what our options were. And we knew we were able to do an egg retrieval and we were able to create embryos of our own biological embryos. And we just knew I couldn't carry the baby. And as soon as my sister, knew this, she volunteered and really insisted that she carry this child. And we were just overwhelmed with gratitude. And it was a lot of, feelings going on because I'm so happy and I feel so grateful, but I also felt so sad.
Mm-hmm.
And I also felt, just like I was missing out, like I was not going to have this baby inside of me. And
Mm-hmm.
I was going to miss the kicks and I was going to not be able to breastfeed. And it wasn't going to be the way that I had planned it to be or hoped or imagined or even just expected, I think. Assumed that it would be. I think we all kind of assume that. But it did take the very first transfer and and she was pregnant and it was the greatest thing ever. Because after seeing, those negative pregnancy tests for literally years, I mean, I think we were at 3 years at that point of negatives, and to see a positive was just, and to hear the heartbeat. I mean, there was not a dry eye in the room. My husband and I were there with my sister, and even the sonographer was crying. It was just a really special moment. And, and going through that pregnancy, there were, it was tough because I knew it was tough on my sister and she doesn't love being pregnant, but she was really taking one for the team. And there were moments, where, she would complain or this or that. And I felt I felt guilt and I felt also sad that I wasn't more joyful about the pregnancy. It was like I wanted to hurry up the pregnancy and get the baby in my arms and finally get to be the mom that I had wanted to be, because I felt like I had to sort of watch from the outside and there was no control. And that was the thing. People said, "Oh, did you tell your sister to eat this or to do this?" And no, you can't control. That's the thing about when something like this happens. This is your wake up call that you don't have control. You have to submit.
Correct.
Yes.
And you just have to surrender to the universe. And the sooner you can do that, I think the smoother a journey it's going to be.
100%.
So, yeah. And so getting there was tough, but I was able to, just go ahead and surrender. And my daughter was born in 2014, and she was just perfect in every way. And holding her for the first time and having our family together, it was just unbelievable. We got to be there in the room when my sister gave birth, and I mean, it was truly just, it was a miracle. It was like watching a miracle happen right before my eyes.
Mm. And you were in there for the birth, right?
Yes,
both
we
of
were,
you were?
both of us.
That's amazing.
Yes, we
Yeah.
were right, behind my sister's head. She was pretty adamant about that, but
Fair.
but oh my goodness, she was just awesome to let us be in there and see our daughter be born and be as much a part of the process as possible, and then we were, here we were, a family of three, and it was like the greatest thing ever. And I remember thinking that then I was going to feel sort of like every other mom. I was going to feel like
Right.
I've got my baby now and I'm a mother just like everyone else. And all of these things I missed out on, I'm not missing out on anymore. But then it was just wild how there were people that would ask, why are you not breastfeeding? Breast is best. And and it was like these random strangers that I felt like I had to explain myself to or be vulnerable with once again, and sort of explain, well, actually, I don't have breast milk. I couldn't do that. And, I just was disappointed, I think, in that aspect of how can it still affect things, and still affect me feeling like I don't fit in and I'm not, like the other moms. And here we are, and I thought we had completed things. And um but you move through those things. And I think like with grief, that it's so heavy at first, when you're realizing the gravity of what your future is going to be, how it's going to be different. But it does get lighter. And I think it was getting lighter over time. And I still had hope for more children because we had more embryos. And about a year into parenthood, we decided to try another embryo. And my sister, she said, okay, one and done. We're good here. Shop closed. So we did go the surrogacy route, and we went to an agency and we were able to be matched with a surrogate that would carry. And she was fabulous. And we did 2 transfers, and unfortunately, neither of them took. We did also try again with me, and the doctor said, let's try a new protocol, some different medications, and just see. Did not work with me. And we were out of embryos at that point. And obviously out of money at that point as well, because it's a very expensive process. I think my husband was exhausted. I was exhausted, but I felt so determined to give my daughter a sibling. And I felt just broken again, like how, all of this and all of this money and for nothing. And we've done everything right. And we have so much to offer another child. We have so much more love to give. And it felt sort of just, how can this be happening? And I remember, around that time, I started experiencing a lot of pain in my hands and my feet. My knees started swelling. I felt exhausted all the time, and I thought it was the stress. But shortly thereafter was diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis. And I realized, that this was something I needed to treat right away because it was damaging my joints. And I was having trouble with some of the simplest things. I mean, just standing up to cook, walking to the mailbox.
I remember you told me you had to like crawl up the stairs at one point.
Yep.
Yeah.
And,
How old was
Charlie?
so Charlie at this point was, I guess she was 3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you were still in that young
Yes,
toddler
she was
age.
young and
All over the place.
all over the place. And I think at that point I thought, wow, I've finally had my miracle child, and now I'm, diagnosed with a degenerative disease, and I'm not going to get better. How can this be happening? Am I going to be able to parent my one miracle child. Thank God we had so much more love to give. And I talked to him about the foster care system and what did he think about that and possibly adopting through foster care. We went to an orientation, and we really thought, well, maybe this will be something. But after the orientation, they really focus on reunification. And that is the goal. And you have to go into foster care knowing that. And we really wanted a child of our own. And, my husband said, we've been through so much heartbreak, and I just don't know how we could bond with a child and parent a child,
Totally.
and then say
Yeah.
goodbye, and really encourage, the goodbye and them being, reunited.
Scott, so wise.
So, and he's like, but I think this has brought me closer to the idea of adoption, because I had brought up adoption many times. And, Scott already said, well, you know how expensive adoption is. I mean, it's more expensive than the process that we did
With IVF.
Wow,
with
I had
IVF.
no
Wow.
idea that
Yes.
adoption is so expensive.
Yes, it is. It's
Wow.
unbelievable. And he said we've already thrown out so much money, and with adoption, it's not guaranteed. A birth mother can change their mind, and
Right.
you can lose so much money. And once again, I think we came to the moment of, but guess what? You're not in control.
Right.
And if you're going to do this, you have to surrender. You just have to surrender, and you have to say, I'm going to take the next step. I'm going to open the next door, and I'm going to walk through it. And, if it's meant to be, if the universe wants us to have another child, I'm going to take all the steps, open all the doors, and either we're going to have another child or we're not. And I didn't want to leave any stone unturned, So he said, look, if you want to drive the bus, I'll ride. And I was like, I'm driving. I'm all in. And that very next morning, I started doing all of my research and figuring out whether I go with an agency or a consultant, or how this, this whole Wild West world of adoption works. And it really is the Wild West. A lot of, so many confusing, just so much information, and not knowing where to begin. And I didn't at the time know anybody that had adopted either to talk to. So, I just started with a company that I had found online, and I asked her a lot of questions, and we went through a lot of information before we decided, okay, we're going with this company. The home study it was a long process. And when we got through all of it and got cleared, 2 weeks after putting up our profile, we were picked. And
Wow.
it was just, just incredible. And, we got to the point, speaking of surrender, of where we put no stipulations on the adoption. We said, any race, any gender, really any background, just, we just want a match. And we had our profile out there, and it had pictures of us and our daughter. And the birth mother told us that she picked us because our daughter looked like her older children. And so she felt like this child would fit in, and then she told us it's a girl. And we were just overjoyed to have been picked, and what an honor. But once again, I think you brace, because, and I hate that, but, after you've been through stuff,
It's that cautious optimism.
you do.
Yeah.
And you almost, I almost would expect that, disappointment. And I hate that to say that, but I just,
Well, it protects you. It
yeah.
protects your heart.
Yeah.
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 It hurts.
Yes.
Yes.
And you just kind of say, well, brace for disappointment. And if it works out, then, and as I've worked through my grief more, I've gotten to a place where I don't live in the expectation of disappointment anymore.
Good.
But at that time, I really was still there, and I felt like, well, so many things have been disappointing, so just better to brace. And we did. We really braced, like, this isn't going to happen. Let's just imagine it's not going to work, but let's hope that it does. And if it does, it'd be amazing. And it did. And, we were just, I mean, we met the birth mother and the birth father, and they, were boyfriend and girlfriend. And we got to go down there to Florida, and we met them once before the birth. We went to one ultrasound, and it was incredible how the birth mom wanted me to, experience the pregnancy. She really, I think, had empathy for me as far as having never experienced a pregnancy and having always wanted to be a mom. And she said, touch my belly, talk to her, this is your baby. And just, with what she was going through at the time, it was just amazing to me. And I felt so cautious and just, just in awe of the fact, I think, that she was able to embrace me in that way and really encourage me to take part in the pregnancy.
It's really special.
It really was. And then she insisted, and this was during COVID, when really this hospital, they had a rule that you couldn't even have a birth partner in there with you. But she was able to, and she is, she is a very spirited, stubborn one when it comes to feisty is the word I'm looking for.
I love it.
Feisty. Yes. And so is my daughter, by the way. And she's just a feisty one. And she was like, my boyfriend is going to be here to help me push. And not only that, but the adoptive mom is going to be in here because she needs to see this baby be born. This is her baby.
Wow.
And she was adamant. And for a while there, they said no. And then she convinced them. And I remember getting to go in there, and it was just incredible. I mean, and I got to see Cammie be born. And, just at that moment when she was laying on her birth mom's chest, and, she was still connected to the placenta, and, and they said, well, who's going to cut the umbilical cord? And they said, well, we want Sarah to cut it. And that was just amazing.
Yeah.
And they took a picture of me cutting the cord. And that was just, I can't even, there are no words really for that moment. And, and then after that, I remember just feeling like they needed to have their time with her. And I hadn't even gotten to hold her yet, but I was just so overwhelmed. I had to go out and tell Scott all about it. He was still waiting in the waiting room. And, even then, I think I remember feeling scared that she might change her mind. But I was just so hopeful. And then she called me back in, send Sarah back in. She needs to hold her baby. And when they handed her to me for the first time, it was just like this moment of like, this is it. This is the good stuff when you do surrender in your life and you do say, okay, so I'm not running the show. I get it. And I give up, and, I'm just going to keep taking the steps forward, opening the doors, and, put my arms out and just, hope that what's meant for me will come my way,
Amazing.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow, that is really beautiful.
So yeah, so, we spent one more day in the area, and we took them to dinner, and they, the birth mom and birth dad, and they're really, really the kindest people. I just, we wanted to keep in touch with them. Unfortunately, we have lost touch, over the time. And that was not my choice, but I haven't been able to get in touch with her. And I'm not sure what's going on, on that end. And I'm sad to not have that touch with her because she is truly an angel in my life. And I feel like, she was a hero. And I wish that I could have saved her from her own circumstances in the way that she was able to save me from my circumstances. But I'm just forever grateful for her.
Amazing.
Incredible. Incredible. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. That's a
Yeah.
beautiful story. And
Aw.
I think certainly gives a lot of people comfort and hope who
Yeah.
are going through similar struggles and
Yeah.
similar journey.
Mhm.
And I think that just you surrendering yourself, because that's what we have to do. We don't know why.
Right.
And we question, why do things happen to us, and why did the universe make this happen?
Right.
We never know the answer.
Yeah.
But I think that being able to find the purpose and
Mhm.
to be able to say, well, this is going to be a new story. It's not
Exactly.
the story I was going to write, but it's a new story, and embrace that. I think is a beautiful
Exactly.
thing and a beautiful gift to give to your two daughters as they go through their life journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I love that you call it surrender.
Mhm.
Like when I talk to friends and family, I just use the analogy or the metaphor of the punching bag that like keeps just getting knocked down and then pops back up with a
Yep.
smile on its face. And
Mhm.
it's not it's not a positive one,
Yeah.
but there's such beauty in surrendering.
Yes.
And I think in your situation and all three of us, life happens to us
Mhm.
sometimes.
Mhm.
To your point, we have no control over it.
Mhm.
And, I always say, man plans and God laughs.
Yeah.
The picture of our life is supposed to be Jared raising his kids,
Yeah.
or, maybe it's having 3 kids instead of
Right.
2 for us,
Mhm.
whatever was supposed to be. And, just continuing to live life, but not fighting it.
Mhm.
You said you opened all the doors and
Mhm.
made sure that no stone was unturned. And
Mhm.
again, I think that that's such a beautiful way of articulating how so many grievers go through loss
Mhm.
and go through life,
Mhm.
because we do have to keep going. We do need to come out of it, and opening the doors, that's something that's important.
It is. I
Um,
think you can get to a place with your grief where I was for a while, where you're sitting with disappointment and
Mhm.
you're expecting disappointment at every turn, and you have to work through that because you don't have to live like that. And you can find joy. You can find joy, and you can get to a place where you recognize that again, and you're not just out there expecting the next thing to fail and the next thing to fail, because that's no way to live,
Mhm.
because you're still here. You have to live this life.
Exactly.
And I think it gives
Exactly.
you an appreciation. I think when you go through
Yes.
things,
Yep.
you have an
You
appreciation
do.
for life.
You
And
do.
you really,
And
yeah,
that's the gift. That's,
that really is a
where
gift.
the gift is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
agree.
Mhm.
Now, what were some things that you did along the way to help with the coping, and or things that you would recommend to anyone going through
Mhm.
a challenging fertility journey?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say is to get a therapist.
Yes.
Well, if you're able to, because truly, there are very few people that understand or that are open about their infertility, and you need somebody to talk to, and you will wear your husband's ears out if and his patience. And I think I was experiencing the infertility differently than Scott was experiencing it. And, there were just moments where I did not feel understood. And I needed to talk to a therapist. I went to support groups. The fertility clinic that I went to had a support group once a month. And through that support group, I was able to make sort of a core group of friends, and we were all about the same place in our journeys. Um, those girls really, we all ended up being able to have children through different ways. But mine was definitely the farthest reaching. They all had them in their own bellies, but we all had to use really unique, medical interventions to get there. And, and holding each other's hands through it. And we, encouraged each other every time someone had a transfer or an egg retrieval. We were there for each other, lifting each other up. And even the husbands, I think, appreciated, when we would get together and they were around somebody who understood, because so many times you feel isolated and alone, and you go in these rooms or these parties where everybody's talking about their kids, or, I remember even Halloween being, really a sad time, seeing everybody with their kids and their costumes. And I didn't even want to answer the door. You can just feel so isolated. And I think it's important to get outside of that isolation and be with people that can relate, and also to tell your story in a safe place. Because it gets rid of some of that shame, being able to tell your story and not be hiding.
It helps to normalize it. I mean,
It does.
that's the goal of what we're trying to do. I mean, I saw a friend last night who she is trying to have a child, and she is single. She's trying to become a solo mom,
Yeah.
and listening to her journey, and
Yeah.
it is so isolating.
It is.
And again, no one is alone in this.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
really, really hard to find that comfort and community, but they are out there.
Yes,
And
they are.
if you look hard enough, for me, we were talking a little bit before we started recording, and, just terminating for medical reasons. That's
Right.
such a, specific thing.
Right.
And it's also very, taboo,
And polarizing.
right,
Right.
exactly, based on just the society we live in. And I was able to find a couple of groups, and it made the world of difference for me. And again, it's, open all the doors, make
Yeah.
sure, all the stones are turned over, and it's out there.
It is.
Yeah.
And listeners, if you can't find it, let us help you find it. Just reach out to us.
Yeah.
Somebody and I are here. Like we want to be a support for you. Because it becomes a very important part of your village as you're going through
Yes.
the roller coaster of life.
Well, community is everything.
It is.
It is.
Support, whether it's
Yes.
one person, two people, or a whole group.
Right.
And that's the most important thing, is
It
to
is.
not feel alone.
Not feel alone.
And feel that isolation, that there are people you can turn to, and people, who will walk the journey with you, who can talk it and walk it, because
Yes.
they've been there.
Right.
Yeah.
And with infertility, it is one of those things that people don't share when they're, I could have, if I went through IVF, I could have told virtually no one, and no one would have known what I'd gone through. And I probably would have never told anyone, to be honest. But I am so glad that I did and that I had to, because that has helped my healing. It really has helped me with my grief, and the load has been lighter. The trauma from it has been lighter because I did share. I had to, because someone else was carrying my baby. But I'm so glad I did.
Yeah. And I will say, for all the listeners out there have been people who have come to me because I was vocal, but not everyone feels comfortable being vocal sharing their stories. But I will tell you, people can be very good at keeping secrets.
Mhm.
So there are people who have come to me,
Absolutely.
and I take it very seriously, and
Mhm.
I want them to trust me. And it again, if you're not comfortable with being vocal, there are people who will keep your secrets.
Safe people.
Exactly.
Yes.
So
Yes.
just seek them out.
Yes.
Because again, we all need that.
We do.
And I do want to say, Sarah, you documented
Mhm.
a lot of your journey.
Yes, I did.
You have a blog,
I do.
Moderation Mama.
Yes.
.weebly.com.
Yes.
And we will link to that on our website.
Great.
Once the new site's up. Stay tuned, everyone. It's
Yeah.
in progress. But yes, that will be on the site soon. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you
Oh,
for being
thank
vulnerable.
you.
Thank you for opening up and sharing your story. It's a beautiful story.
It is my
I
honor to
sat
share it.
Thank you.
sat
Yeah.
here holding back a lot of tears.
Mm.
Yes.
So I appreciate that, and I know our
Yeah.
listeners appreciate it.
Yes.
So for everyone out there listening, thank you for joining us today. And as Greer said earlier, as we say, you're not alone in your grief journey. Just reach out to us. We're here to help you. We're here to support you wherever you are and whatever your journey may be.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. You're
Thank
amazing.
you guys.
Love you.
Love you guys.
Thank you, everyone. And be sure to tune in. We will have another episode next week for Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. And be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks so much.
See you
Bye.
soon. Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you love what you heard, please follow Grief and Grit and share our podcast with your friends and family.